Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's about a minute or two after 6 p.m. on
April 24th.
24th, okay, April 24th, 2025. I never looked down. And I'm going to call the budget committee to order. Before we go further, I'd like for everybody to go around and introduce themselves because some people may not remember us because we're old and we're forgetful.
Whoa.
Some of us, or it's you're new. So I'm Sherry French, I'm a commissioner and I am board president.
Bob Rubenstein, Commissioner.
David Shireman, Budget Committee member.
Tessa Donnell, Commissioner, Board Treasurer.
Tim Fisher, Budget Committee member.
Erin Blue, Budget Committee member.
I'm Jason Brandstatter, Chief Engineer for CRW.
I'm Christina Irish. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and also the Budget Officer.
Ted Morris, Senior Finance and Accounting Specialist.
Stephen Mott, Accountant.
And the handsome guy by the door is Todd.
Sorry, Todd Iverkin, General Manager. Apologize.
And Todd, yeah.
IT Manager.
And Steve Hout, Water Resources Manager.
Oh, they have your name spelled Hooch on it.
I know. They're getting me corrected.
I'm gonna leave that one in my book. I think that's good. Okay, our first order of business is to elect a chairman for the budget committee. Do I hear any nominations?
I'm gonna nominate Erin again. She did such a good job last time.
And the time before
No
that.
reason to change.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other nominations?
They will call.
You wanna do a roll call? You wanna do a
Yes.
hand vote? Roll call?
Naomi. Aaron.
Aye.
Robert. Bob.
Yes.
Tessa.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Pass unanimously.
It's all on you.
Thank you. First order of business is to elect a vice chair. Do we have any nominations for a vice chair?
I nominate Tim.
I second it.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. Then we'll do the vice chair. Would you please, any further nominations? All right. please call the vote.
Aaron,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Tessa,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Rusty, not here, Tim,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
All right, unanimous.
Perfect. Tim is the vice chair. Congratulations, Tim. I think our next order of business is to approve the minutes from the April 27th, 2023 budget committee meeting. Is there any discussion or questions?
I'm going to be approved as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Aaron.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Tessa.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Perfect. The minutes are approved. For the budget committee process, Christina, can you help us out with this?
Yeah. For the budget meeting, this is our very first meeting. We will go over the budget message and go over the general fund, the CIP fund, and the other funds. In between each section, there will be a time for public comment if we have some, and also for discussions and any questions. If you do have a question, just let me know and I will address it. The goal of the budget committee is to have an approved document that we can then send to the board for adoption. Any questions about the budget process before we move on? Okay.
Thanks. So we do have an opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make a comment?
Nope, nobody
No one online. Okay. Hearing none,
Come sit at the table.
we can.
You want to come to the table?
You can come sit with the grown-ups.
Representing the public.
I think that was an order.
I think so.
Please. Yeah.
All right.
All right, then we'll hand the meeting over to Christine Irish for presentation.
All right, thank you. Great, thanks. Good evening. I'm again looking forward to going over the 2025-27 budget with you. It's been very well worked on by the management team and the staff of CRW, and we're excited to share it with you. The first thing with, go down, I pushed the wrong button, I pushed stop.
A short presentation.
All done.
That was it.
Stop.
Take a vote.
Moving right along.
Okay, and so there, went through that, so I'm gonna come to, here we go, budget message is the first thing. We're gonna talk about, this is spelled wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. When we are building the budget, the first thing we always consider is the strategic planning goals. And here are our 3 goals. You'll see them listed up over on the board. And that is our main structure for building the budget. So our goal 1, ensure a reliable water supply in communities we serve by investing in infrastructure and emergency preparedness. Rusty is on. He's on. Okay. Good evening, Rusty. We are doing that by continuing robust capital improvement planning. It drives our CIP budget for this biennium. And we'll give more information that in the CIP presentation. And we also have significant costs that is increases driven by enhanced security measures. And rising operational expenses, and that are ensuring the production and delivery of high quality drinking water. For the next goal, which is be a water district of choice for attracting, developing, and retaining high qualified workforce, providing a safe, healthy, rewarding environment that values employees. And the ways that we did this in the budget, we implemented an updated salary schedule that was approved at the beginning of 2024. We increased funding for training of staff and employee development, and we have a competitive benefits package. The third goal, which is heighten public awareness of district's role in enhancing public health, community vitality, and economic growth. And the ways that we are doing this is we have continued collaboration with regional partners, including Clackamas River water providers and the regional water providers, consortium. Sorry. And then internal and external communications managed by our existing staff. This has allowed us to remove an unfilled budget position of the public outreach and communications position. The budget message, a little bit about our revenues. Our revenues, 92% of our revenues is our water rate revenue. 85% of that is from retail water, 7% is our wholesale water, and the consumption has been consistent year over year. The remaining of our revenue is operating revenue, which is our connection fees, our testing from outside agencies, and our services provided to other water providers. Some of our non-operating is our rental income for BCA. And the big one that has been is interest earnings. We have had high interest earnings over the last few years. And occasionally we have surplus equipment, and we have had some grants over the last few years. And then system development charges. This is about 1% of our total. So for our water rates, for fiscal year 2025, we've included the board approved rate of 5%. And we're also projecting a 5% increase for the 2025. But again, that will have to go through a rate hearing and will be presented in 2025 to the board. You can see here currently where we rate to other partners or other providers in our area. And this was data that was pulled as of April 7th. A little bit about beginning fund balance, because this is a big change to this budget. So I did want to bring that forward. General fund beginning fund balance increased by 73.3%. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I give you a little bit of historical there. The blue is where we have budgeted and the red is where we actually came in. So you can see for the 2021-23, we budgeted 7 million and we got about 10 million. And for the 2023-25, we budgeted 7.5 million and our actuals were about 14.7 million. So that is why you see a big beginning fund balance increase, and we're projecting to be right about 13 million. Again, this is a little bit of a conservative number, but it is more accurate than the 7.5. Yes.
Is this okay? I know to ask questions, interrupt.
Sure.
What's the genesis of the big difference between the budget and the actuals?
Great question. Part of that is we've had increased interest earnings. Our water sales, our water rates have been coming higher than projected. And we've also had some extra service revenue that's coming. And this last year, we also did receive some grant revenues this last budget. Expenditure. So here's looking at a comparison of you'll see 3 years of actuals. And then this current biennium's adopted, and then our proposed budget that is bringing forward, kind of comparison. So overall, this is all funds. So overall, we're looking about a 6 million increase for all. Personnel services, this is for general fund. That is where we house our personnel services. Between our current actuals and the budgeted, there is no change in FTE. We've just done some movement between departments. It is increasing about 18.49%. And I do have some later slides. There were some great questions and I did put that in the presentation, and I think that will address exactly what all those increases are. But 18.49, the increases do include our PERS rates that are increasing this biennium, medical and dental that are changing, payouts upon retirements, and then other salary, which we'll go more into. Materials and services is also seeing an increase of about 14.9%. In some of the largest areas that we are seeing that. Hello. Welcome.
I'm
Steve,
silly.
you're up. Or no, we got some.
Yeah. Come on in. Equipment. That is going up about 49%, and that is due to, we have some aging equipment that does need replaced. We also have some increased facility and security. This is at 18.2%, and this is due to some repairs that we're doing and also some increased security needs. And then our professional and contracted services. This is, these are just the main reasons. There are other points in this that are going up, but these are some of the main reasons. The professional and contracted services, this is due to aging equipment that's requiring us to hire more electrical and other services to help us maintain our equipment. We also have some areas in Springbrook Cost. We've had to have some contract with them. So these are just some of the main areas.
Springbrook is our.
Oh,
we're
yes, Springbrook.
Transitioning with our new financial system that we're.
Question
transitioning.
with regard to facilities and security. Have we suffered any significant security issues at this point, or is this just being a little bit proactive to take care of that?
Great
So you want me to
question.
jump? So a couple of things. So one, the district's conducted a risk and resilience assessment. And so as part of that, it notified that we really needed to probably step up our game. The direct answer to your question as far as what impacts have we have had some theft take place where people come around the back fences and stuff. So we've tried to improve some of the fencing. But then we've also, through this risk and resilience assessment, identified a number of our sites that needed to have better security as far as the fencing. And then we've also tried to be a little bit more proactive as far as installing some cameras at our remote sites. So now an operator, if an alarm goes off, an operator has the ability to go and look at that camera first before dispatching. So it's an ongoing, we still got more work to do, but we've made some progress this last budget.
Capital outlay, you will see that in both the general fund and the CIP fund. General fund, it is decreasing by 30.3%, and the CIP we're seeing an increase of 32.4%. And again, more information about the CIP will be later in the presentation. And then our debt services, this is in our revenue bond fund. This pays for our outstanding 2016 bond payments.
What's that gonna be paid off?
2048?
Okay.
Yep.
What's the interest on the bond?
Ooh, good question. I can look up at that. I don't know that off the top of my head. You, what, they're gonna look it up.
And is this the debt that we're talking about refinancing?
And then our transfers, and keep in mind that transfers do have to be balanced within all funds. So this is just taking a look at how our transfers in and our transfers out, the funds that they're going to and that they do balance. Okay, time right now is a good time to pause for questions. And Rusty, if you do have a comment, please just speak up. And you guys are free. Any questions?
So Christina, you said later in the presentation, you're gonna drill into a little bit of the $6 million increase.
I'm sorry, say that one more.
The $6 million increase over, I think it was 6 million from the last biennium to this biennium.
Total expenditures?
In the
Total
little
expense.
parts, yeah, well, I did one of the questions I got was for personal services. I am gonna drill into that one. And then just kind of explain some of the other ones. I didn't call out the 6 million like line by line. Yeah, but it is, you will see it in each one. Most of that is, part of that is in our CIP, which you'll see later. We do have an increase in that one.
And you'll be able to point out which are more one-time expenditures versus a reoccurring expense.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other questions about the budget message before we move on directly to the general fund?
Yeah. So one thing I just want to point your attention to, so two helpful documents to me is on page 124, and then it's broken down a different way in 120, LB 30 and the LB 31 form. And so what that'll do is it breaks it down by departments. And
You'll
then,
want to go on, because
Oh,
the
okay.
6 million is all these pages, it's
Right.
all funds. So that that shows line by line where the difference is.
but and then on 125, that breaks it down into different areas as far as materials and services. And so that gives you a percentage to highlight if there's something you want to.
Yeah, and we'll talk
have more
about
questions
personal
about.
services on when we get there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. General fund. Appropriations, so general fund, we do appropriate, we appropriate by personnel services, materials and services, and capital outlay, and give you a little bit more. So personnel services, we already talked, is increasing by 18.5%. And this includes our PERS rate, our wage adjustments, forecasted cost of living, increases for each year, forecast increase of medical and dental for each year, expected costs of payouts for potential retirees. And then we also knew this year we have the expected cost of it's not a long stipend, I'm sorry, it's a longevity pay, and then a new salary schedule.
Christine, how long is the current contract for the union?
That's great. It was a 3-year contract at the beginning of this year.
Great, and so are the COLAs included? Are they specified in that? Are they tied to the CPI?
Yes, tied to the CPI. So the next, so we know that next year, the 2025, sorry. 25, 26. We do not know 26, 27. So we did do the highest rate, which was 5.5.
Great.
We have a range.
Yeah, we have a
range with
low
the
range and a
low.
high range. And so when doing the budget, we budgeted
Most
the high,
conservative assumption.
the most expensive expansion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you.
We generally, when budgeting, just kind of for expenditures, you like to budget a little higher than us, and then revenues, you like to be a little conservative. Okay. And then materials and services, already kind of talked about this, some of the big changes in that customer service, we did see a decrease. The primary reason for that is we did negotiate with our payment processing and we did get lowered fees by quite a bit. So that was the main reason for there. Equipment increase, we talked about our aging equipment. We have already talked about our facilities and security and our contracted services. Capital outlay, just a little, what is capital outlay? It's more of a one-time item that we are purchasing that is over $5,000. So historically, we have put computers as capital outlay. Not in this budget. The reason why is because one computer item is more than likely not over 5,000. Yes, we do purchases of multiple that are over 5, and our whole order is over 5,000, but that's not what capital outlay is. Capital outlay is one individual item over 5,000. So that is why we do have a decrease in our capital outlay, one of the reasons. So you will, we have the decrease of it's 718,000. And you do note there our 5-year projections of capital outlay. That's with information we know currently at this time today. And then you can find more item descriptions on our capital outlay on pages 51 to 82. We give a description of each and how the year we project to spend. Any questions about general fund? Okay. Gonna hand it over to Jason and he's gonna give you more information about the CIP fund.
Thanks, Christina. I'm Jason Brassett. I'm here to talk about our CIP planning and projects. So to start off, engineers, we love acronyms, and here we've duplicated our acronyms. We have CIP and we have CIP. So CIP can indicate an individual capital improvement project, or it can indicate the capital improvement program. Most of what we'll be talking today will be about the individual projects and the budgets for those projects, but just wanted to highlight that we also have an ongoing capital improvement program. That's our multi-year planning process, such as our water system master planning and other efforts that we make to really take a broad look at the needs for the district. So then how are capital improvements projects funded? We are funded primarily through the Capital Reserve Fund. And then we also receive some funding through SDCs, and then we have the benefit of some grants and loans in our current biennium. The SDC Reserve Fund is funded through new services that are connected to the system. And then the Capital Reserve Fund receives transfers from the general fund, which, as Christina discussed, is primarily funded by water sales. So then here's our program strategy. We look out and we make our best efforts to assess the needs of the district and then plan our resources to meet those needs. So we assess those needs through master and strategic planning, as I said, the water system master plan, the water facilities treatment planning that we have. And then, those documents can become a little bit static. Our water system master plan was adopted in 2019. So then year over year, we're looking for updated field observations from our field crews and other things that we see happening in our system to update those projects that we need to accomplish. And then two, some of our priorities wind up getting driven by responding to our outside agencies, primarily the county and other cities. You'll see we have a couple of projects this year with the city of Milwaukee and then also in coordination with Wes. And so then we have to plan our resources to meet those needs. So we're targeting the replacement of our assets and looking to enhance those things. And in this biennium, we will be spending down our capital reserves, and that's in alignment with the 6-year planning document that the previous chief engineer Adam had put together. So we're continuing that into in this biennium. We are seeking to have a balanced approach. Previously, I think there had been a desire to seek a balance kind of north to south. This year, you'll see more of a desire to have a balance between our water treatment plant and the supplies we're producing there, and then also addressing the needs of our distribution system. And then we're always looking for those alternative funding options. Those are primarily going to be grant funding opportunities to supplement those resources that we receive here locally. So then once we've assessed and we've evaluated our resources, the need always exceeds the resource that we have. So then we have to do a lot of work to really figure out how we're going to prioritize which projects are going to move forward. So our key drivers are just what's listed there. The capacity of the facility, the age, how it might impact water quality within the system. And then we're always aware of resilience hazards, specifically seismic, and addressing how we can harden our system to be resistant to things that might negatively impact the system. And from there, we go into some additional selection criteria, looking at the characteristics of our facilities. What kind of maintenance history do they have? Are the costs, are they a capital? Are they a one-time expenditure? Are we spending a lot of dollars on maintenance year over year or month over month? And then can we address a project that will help us to reduce that? Spend a lot of time looking at our hydraulic model. How will these projects benefit the system and its hydraulic capacity? Again, those coordination with the external agencies drives a lot of this prioritization. And then always a desire for conservation. If we can repair those leaking pipes, then Steve needs to produce less water, and it just makes life a little easier. So then we go from there into budget. All right, this is kind of a fun little story. So I was looking a little closer at this picture. This is from the 152nd reservoir, and this is quite a few years ago when they're actually constructing it. I think I'm actually one of those people down there in one of those
How are
vessels.
you?
I think this was the
Tour, huh?
American Waterworks tour, if I remember right.
Right.
Chris Young from
Yep.
then Murray Smith was flying his drone and taking pictures. So I even got myself in the presentation. We need, so that also that says we need to update the pictures because that's probably 2012 or something. All right, so jumping back, we prioritized our project. So now, how do we move those forward into budgeting? Well, the highest priority projects, those ones are selected, they're moved forward. The lower priority projects that we've spent some time on, we put those on a list and they're saved for future consideration. And then this year, Joe Eskew and I worked together to develop budgets for these projects. And that's passed around to our staff for review and then ultimately brought here to the committee for approval. So here's an overall map. You'll find this on page 86 in your budget books there. showing how the projects are distributed throughout the system. You'll see that we have a collection of projects right there at the water treatment plant, and then a collection distributed throughout the rest of the system. And we'll go over each of those individually here. All right, so then jumping over to page 87, we're looking at the transportation and CRW impact project. This is our ongoing coordination project. So when projects come up with the county, with Wes, with Milwaukee, and we need to be able to respond to those quickly, we have a budget line item to begin the process of responding to these projects that come up from other agencies. If these projects grow in scope, beyond say about $50,000, then those projects are then allocated to their own line item, become their own project.
Are these projects generally like a surprise, like something broke in the road and they're gonna fix it, so you might as well fix the water thing there too? Or do the other agencies have their own 5-year plan that you're already aware of, and you know in 2 years they're digging up this road, so we might as well do the water lines there too?
These are projects that come up that at this time, so they're projects that we're not aware of now.
Okay.
So it's something that West might be doing, or that the county might be doing, that we're not presently aware of. Then they decide to engage this project, we need to be able to respond and begin to plan and decide how we're going to modify our system to cooperate with them, or to take advantage of opportunities to save cost. So yeah, it's put in place to respond to projects that we're not currently aware of.
I assume there's some sort of like regular contact or meeting or something like that where they.
We do make efforts to have that regular contact. That is sometimes challenging to keep all those pieces together.
Sometimes it's just wishful thinking.
That's certainly one of my, relatively new here, but something I'm working on is to build those relationships with Wes and the other agencies so that we can have more awareness of what kind of projects they're bringing forward. And you'll see, we do have quite a few of actually these projects here are coordination projects and things that we are aware of. But these other agencies do have their own budgets and their own priorities, and they come up with things at times that we're not aware of. So this gives us a facility to.
I've got a question on item 2 up there. I'm looking at your budget page, the capital improvement projects, and it breaks it out. A portion of the budget is for 1 year, and then the balance comes in another year. So that means you're doing the engineering the first year, and then the construction or implementation of the project itself?
Yeah, so you're looking specifically at the Holly Lane projects on page 88, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, page 88 is
Yeah.
a good example of how they broke apart there.
It is, and you'll see this later when we talk about some of the way we're scheduling the project. So yes, we've allocated some funds into the 25-26 budget to begin work on that project. And then we'll wrap it up in the 26-27 year. So we'll start some of the planning and design work now, and then we have the bulk of the budget to engineer or to construct it later.
So one more thing to add is sometimes, especially when we're working with other entities, their funding may be a timing issue in question. So even though we all lay out our plans to say this is what we're gonna do, and we try to coordinate, there's still other factors that influence when that actually happens.
That leads me to part 2 of my question is, and I sent Christina an email, and they turned out to be carryover projects, and we've got several of those on our budget here. So how do you shift the budgeted amount from the last biennial to what happens to that money when you come this year? Are we doing something when we're moving money from the last cycle to this cycle, or can you do that?
That's a great question, and I have a slide later
Okay.
that has your question and the answer. So if
Okay.
you don't mind
Yeah,
holding
we'll-
on to that
we'll wait.
question.
We'll
then
come back to that, yeah.
We'll get back to that.
And then we will talk in some detail about our carryover projects
Yeah.
too.
No, that is a great question.
All right,
Okay.
I'm gonna get back to my scheduled program here.
Sorry.
Yeah, great questions, thank you. So now we are still on page 88, little overview on the Holly Lane water line project. We've got a 1960s era 12-inch steel water main. So this is a project where we talked about responding to some of the field observations. Our field crews are having to make a lot of repairs in this area. This steel line, even though it's from the 1960s, we'd love to get 100 years of life out of a pipeline. Here's a case where we're not going to get that. It has deteriorated in the ground. It has a lot of leaks. We're spending a lot of time and our resources in maintaining this pipeline. So we're going to move ahead with the replacement of it. We'll replace about 1,600 feet of it this year. We are also anticipating that the county will be replacing the Holly Lane Bridge, and we'll be looking at that in our next biennium. So this will get us set up to be able to, once that bridge is replaced, we'll have basically new pipeline from Redland Road all the way up to, I think it's Donovan where the school is at there, and we'll have that whole segment solidified. That's the intent of this project.
So Jason, you said this year you're gonna do 1,600 feet.
Correct.
How many feet are we talking about to fix the problem with steel pipe?
The whole, of all the steel pipe or the whole, I mean,
The steel pipe that you're saying you're not gonna get 100 years out of, that
right,
you're spending a lot of maintenance dollars
Mhm.
fixing. So you're fixing
we're fixing
a
1,600
quarter
feet.
mile.
Correct.
That's all.
How, what's the total length of like the Holly Lane pipeline that's steel? I don't know that number off the top
Are
of
we
my
talking
head.
miles?
Oh, we're,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
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 And we've got a lot of steel pipe in the system. And some of it has not performed well.
Yeah.
And some of it has to do with installation, and we'll avoid the long conversation of how cathodic protection or how cathodics work in pipelines. They build their own little battery cells and burn themselves out, especially when they're not installed in uniform condition. And unfortunately, some of the old installation practices, they didn't get the pipelines installed in a great uniform condition. And so they literally just form a little battery cell and burn themselves out. And we see that with some steel lines, we see it on some cast iron lines. So yeah, there's a lot of need to be replacing pipelines within our district. And if we're going to continue to provide the level of service that we want to our customers, that's something we're going to continue to have to address in the future. Next project, page 90, looking at the King Road improvements. This is a coordination project with the city of Milwaukee. We're looking at replacing about 1,100 feet of 1950s era 4-inch cast iron. We'll be replacing with 6 and 8 inch piping. It'll be done under IGA with the city of Milwaukee and constructed by their contractor. Then on page 92, we've got the PC Culvert crossing. This is a coordination project with Wes. They're installing a new 16-foot wide culvert there across Thiessen near Aldercrest Road. We'll actually be needing to remove about 100 feet of our pipeline to facilitate their installation and putting that back. Anticipating that our crews will be able to perform the initial cut and cap of the pipe so that the work can be performed, and then we'll likely use one of our on-call contractors to complete the installation of the pipeline after the new culvert is installed.
Just a curiosity question, when you do that, are all the pipes interconnected enough that like no one's gonna run out of water if you turn off this 100 feet for?
In this location, right, so this is not a dead end line, this is a line that's hydraulically looped to other connections, so, right, so we can cut and cap this out. And we're not gonna take customers out of service.
No, I'm assuming we're, is most of our piping set up that way?
It varies by location. We do have locations where we do have dead end lines, and we have locations where, yeah, there are definitely critical sections of pipe where if we took that out, we could wind up with a lot of people out of water. So we do, as we are planning and designing our system, we look for opportunities to create looping, right? So that we have redundancy, so that we can turn segments off to serve them. So yeah, this location that we can, a lot of locations we can, but there are certainly locations where we have critical segments that we can't.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to page 94.
I had a
Stanley
question.
Avenue improvements. This is a, sorry.
Yeah, what's the age of the water line we're replacing there on Thiessen Road?
Isn't that 50s?
92?
Pardon?
You have a date on it.
Mhm.
Oh, it does. So it looks like the segment we're replacing is 1957 is what I see from our mapping.
Okay, thank you.
Back to,
Last in around 60 years or the typically last 100.
typical, I mean, design life for piping is probably 75 to 100 years, depending on the material installation. in my experience, we have some pipes in our system that are approaching 100 years that are still seem to be performing reasonably. Obviously, like we said, we have other pipes that have not made it that long that are not performing well. A lot of it has to do with material selection and installation. And then it has to do with soil conditions as well. There's a lot of variables in that.
But I guess ones we're replacing with, we're planning for 100, or hoping for 100.
We are hoping for 100 years of design life with new piping installation, correct?
We'll have a meeting when that happens, so we'll see. how- Y'all lasted that long.
We're gonna come back to you.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll celebrate.
You said it, you said it.
Yeah, that's right. I said the stuff I put in now, well, in 100 years, I might not be here for it.
You better be here. You won't be around.
I'm not gonna make
Where
it.
you going?
All right, back to Stanley Avenue improvements, a substantial project, 3,500 feet of pipeline, 1950s, 6-inch cast iron that we're replacing. Again, in coordination with the city of Milwaukee and improvements that they're making to Stanley between King Road and Johnson Creek. Again, through IGA, and work to be carried out by the city's contractor. We're anticipating this will start in 26. That's one of our distribution system projects. So now we're jumping on to our water treatment plant projects. Now we're on page 96. First one here is water treatment plant structural improvements. So there's a water treatment plant structural improvements project that's in the current biennium. So this is not a carryover. That work was addressing some seismic and some other concerns. And so we're wrapping up that work, and that structural improvement projects will be complete with this biennium, and this will be a new structural improvements project. What we're doing here is we've got an old chlorine room, we call it room 105. It's actually the double doors off to kind of the right-hand side in the photograph there. Currently, there's some ascorbic acid that is utilized in that room. We're wanting to make some retrofits so that it can be used for polymer feeding. We'll include removing those double doors, installing a roll-up door. We'd like to have a man door from the next room to have an internal man access way inside. And then we may also be looking at making some expansions to the dock facilities to make it safer for staff to move materials around out there. Moving on from that, we're on page 98 with the water treatment plant expansion plan. So this really goes back to the water treatment facilities. I believe it's option 2B that we were looking at there for the longer term expansion of the water treatment plant facilities. So with this biennium, we'll be looking at taking the facilities plan and advancing it towards preliminary design. Anticipating that in the next biennium, we'll be looking at actually constructing some of those improvements. You'll see that that's not shown in the out years of the CIP because we don't have enough information to present that to you at this time. But this is really the next step in that, and looking at what ozone or pre-treatment facilities we're wanting to implement. We're also looking at additional control facilities that we need to have room for our operators, and we need a more secure SCADA room. And so that's what we're looking at the planning for.
How does the age of our treating plant compare with others like Southfork, for example? Are we in the same?
Yeah, so ours and South Fork are similar vintage, about over 60 years old. The North Clackamas County Water Commission, they have a slow stands filter that's kind of a bulletproof thing that's, I don't know how long that's been there. And then they actually have membranes that are,
I think it's 20 years.
was it 20 years on those? I was trying to think, I think it was early 2000s.
Yeah.
So that's a newer, and then there's a lot a lot of activity going on. I mean, you have, on the you have the Willamette River Water Treatment Plant, that was the early 2000s. You got a new plant going on in Sherwood, that'll be a 2026 plant. Portland's doing 2026, yeah, so it's just kind of a hodgepodge of different ages.
All right, next project, we're on page 100 with the backwash pump improvements. So actually, we're doing some work on this right now. So Our backwash system has a backwash pump that can provide supply, backwater filters. And then we also have facilities where we can use distribution water to backwash the filters in the plant. We're working right now on making some additional improvements to that distribution water, kind of the backup system for the backwash pump. So that will operate more automatically and reliably. And then we're looking at a need to replace the existing backwash pump. A few years ago, some modifications were made to the backwash pump facilities. They moved some piping from below the slab of the roof of the clear well to above that slab, and it didn't get put back real great. So there's some real structural concerns with the way the current backwash pump is installed. It's actually a little bit scary to look at right now. And so getting the backup system operating more automatically and reliably will then allow us to have a plan to then remove and replace that existing backwash pump.
So when something like that happens, was that just something that went wrong in the engineering? Because, I mean, it had to be designed.
It was
and it had to
designed.
be approved, and then it got implemented, and now you're saying it's not working really good. So somebody had an idea that didn't pan out.
Somebody had an idea that didn't pan out. So what it was, they cut out part of the pump foundation so that they could move the piping from below to above. And instead of putting that back as concrete, they put a metal plate across there and then put the pump frame back on top of that metal plate. That metal plate is now kind of taking a little upturn, and it really doesn't look good.
Sounds dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll be taking that out. We'll be removing a large portion of that old pump foundation and putting a new reinforced concrete pump foundation in there so that we have a solid base to set a new pump on. Yeah. So it seemed like it was one of those things, seemed like a really good idea at the time. And now a few years later, it didn't turn out great.
Well, but I think it is an example of where sometimes you look for cost savings opportunities. And it's kind of one of those things that, yep, it may work and it may serve that need, but is it gonna serve that need as long as you expect it to? So, I mean, I'm assuming that there was, I mean, none of us were around at that point, but I'm assuming there was probably some things indicated that, oh, we can do this cheaper or something.
We can do this cheaper and this will work okay. And maybe it is still working. So it worked okay for a while. But you look at it now and you go, and I'm not sure that's going to operate real reliably a whole lot longer, and we better address this. Yeah. All right, moving on from there, page 102, the central SCADA upgrade. So if you don't know what SCADA is, it's system control or supervisory control and data acquisition. So this is our central computer system that operates the plant and then distributes water out into our distribution system. We've got a system, again, there were some budget decisions made to keep an older system running and to do some in-house programming of the system. And it works okay, but Steve is having a lot of challenges with it. I've been over there several days where they're scratching their heads just trying to get the treatment plant to start up because of some of the issues that they're having with the SCADA system. So we've really hit a point that we need to invest some serious dollars and modernize and update that SCADA system so that we can continue to operate our treatment plant reliably into the future and then continue to distribute that water out into our system. So this will be replacing that central system, and then later on we'll be looking at upgrading the rest of the system.
So if I can add to that, and I'll kind of give my little bit of a pitch, but also explanation. So, you know, the previous budget, we didn't really talk much about this. And I'll be honest, this is something that's really come to light more so this last couple of years. And so this wasn't something as much on our radar, except for this more recent period. And just to reassure everybody that we're taking a methodical approach to this, we're just completing our SCADA master plan, which is an extensive document. And keep in mind, it's not just our plant, it's all of our facilities for our reservoirs, our pump stations and everything. So this is a critical component to us. And then one of the other big challenges for SCADA systems is the whole cybersecurity piece too. So we're using this as an opportunity to really harden that. And this is also something that was identified in our risk and resilience assessment, that we really needed to take steps. We're talking about security. Well, the SCADA security was one of those areas that was updated. So there's a lot of things that are taking place. Steve and his team have been working a lot on kind of looking at what is a system that's going to be stable. And so, you know, our master plan, I think, is going to point out that we want to take a different approach. And unfortunately, that different approach requires us to make a lot of changes, which is why you're seeing a bigger number. So, but we've also verified that it's in line with a number of other systems that are doing this too. So we're not alone in experiencing this challenge right now. So
So this is hardware and software that we're talking about, correct?
So this is, yeah, so this is the, yes, this is the short answer,
Okay.
but it's separate from our IT system.
Correct.
It's our OT system.
Yeah, so is this a new vendor that we're going down, or is this buying their latest and greatest from the current vendor?
No, well, so the master plan's coming out, and so it looks like we'll probably switch to a different system completely.
And it is changing the core of the software that we're using. Right now, they use a Wonderware program. We're switching to an Ignition program. So the core of the system is going to change, and then we are. So then the SCADA system then interacts with what we call programmable logic controllers. So these are the computers that are out at the various pump stations and various components of the plant. So yeah, updating that hardware as well. Not necessarily to have the latest and greatest or top of the line, but having robust equipment that will operate reliably.
So what you're saying is we have a hodgepodge of PLCs at different pump stations throughout the district.
We do.
Yeah. We're just trying to keep that programming in-house would be almost impossible. I would think.
Yep,
And the challenge.
very well spoken.
Yeah. Are all the changes replacements happening in this plan, or did you say we're?
So
doing
this
central now
this
and
budget is for
later?
central SCADA, so this will address the water treatment plant, and it will address the low pump station. And then that's what we have budget for now. So this does not address the external pump stations and reservoir sites. That will be an additional cost. We'll likely be talking about that with the next biennium budget.
Is there a risk that having a new central system and maintaining the old peripheral system is going to be even worse than the current situation?
No, that's been,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I assume
that's been a
discussed
real
already,
challenge and how we do that. And what most likely what we're gonna do is we can upgrade the software so that we won't be running on the old software, the old SCADA software, but using the new, then we can still control all those field equipment. And if it does fail, we've got plans to go in and start changing out certain zones if we have to. But it should be pretty seamless. Once we get, it's gonna take about 3-4 months to do the plant, minimum. We're gonna start, and then once we get that done, then we can move to getting the software for the remote sites done and switch over.
So this will touch all locations, but it won't be new hardware.
Right.
What's the kind of the approach in finding a new vendor or, cause I imagine it's really important that like they can provide maintenance and support for many, many years. But are there like a lot to choose from, or I imagine it's probably just 2 or 3 or something like that?
How many different vendors are there?
Or I guess with whatever the software,
There's probably 5 or 6 top ones that are in the industry. Right now, it seems like most everybody, as Jason mentioned, we really looked at Ignition. They have a lot of open source in the community and the support of, any vendor, anything, and a lot of the old existing vendors here in the Portland area, and even some of the plants, they're all switching to Ignition. So we feel it's probably a very safe, future-proof selection. So we'll have a lot of support. We'll have not only the support from the vendors, whether it's the community, but also other water plants. We're actually starting currently right now to network with the other plants and talk about the problems they've had and what solutions we can come up with in the future. That's a good community.
All right, next project, page 104, water treatment plant, low lift pump station number 2 replacement. So the low lift pump station is the pump station that brings water from the Clackamas River and pushes it up into the treatment plant. Replacement of pump number 2 was identified with the facilities plan. As we replace that, we'll be adding a new variable frequency drive, which will allow us to modulate the flow that comes through that pump to make operations of the plant more efficient and easier. Includes our water treatment plant projects. So now we're on to our carryover multi-year projects. So just kind of a note on that of why we have kind of so many carryover multi-year projects. As we've said before, needs exceed resources. And so we've got to stretch things out sometimes. We occasionally have unforeseen delays in projects, which require us to carry them over into the next biennium. And then some of our projects are just, they're large enough projects that we aren't going to complete the design and construction in 1-2 year period. And so then those ones are brought along as well. And then as we can and where needed, we bring in outside resources from consultants to assist staff in getting these projects completed. Our carryover projects for this year, oh, I got my numbering got up there. We got 2 number 11s. Yeah. Bradley Road Pump Station on page 106. So I put an asterisk here because it's kind of a carryover project, kind of not. We've been looking at purchasing property for a Bradley Road Pump Station for a while now. It was previously in the capital outlay under central services. We made a decision this year to move that property purchase into the CIP. So in past practice for the district, they were not purchasing property under the CIP, but that is a common practice in the industry. So when I worked for the city of Gresham, we commonly did property purchases within the CIP. So
And when I work anywhere, any big property, that asset that enhances the district's facilities is CIP. So a purchase would be adding to our asset.
So ultimately, the Bradley Road Pump Station will help us to be able to move more water into the Holcomb and Hunter Heights pressure zones. Right now, this project will just be to acquire the property that we need for the pump station. We are continuing conversations with the Butterfields in an effort to acquire some property out there near the reservoir. We'll just have to kind of see where that goes. And then we've also been engaged with Clark Land Resources that are helping us look along the corridor where property might be available. And then working through the county to make sure, really doing our due diligence so that we acquire a piece of property that it's going to do what we need it to do, and we can satisfy the county's requirements.
Are you anticipating growth in that area, or is it just to increase resilience for existing customers?
It's more allowing us to use more of our water in that area of the district. Some areas down there are served through our connection with the South Fork Water Board, and so this will allow us to use more water from the CRW plant to serve those customers. But then, yes, it does also increase resilience as well, because we have multiple supplies. Monroe Street improvements on page 108. This project replaces about 3,400 feet of 1960s cast iron piping. We're actually currently under construction on this project. IGA with Clackamas County. So construction began earlier this year. We're anticipating that the work will primarily complete this summer. And so we're just carrying over funding to be able to complete the project. So the 82nd Drive water line and then the I-205 crossings, these 2 projects really are joined at the hip, even though they are somewhat separate. So the 82nd Drive project is 2,100 feet of new 12-inch water line that we'll be installing, replacing some at least 100 years old cast iron piping that's in the system. That project was identified in the water system master plan, and it's an extension of the phase 1 82nd Drive project. And then it connects to the I-205 crossing at Manfield Port. And so then kind of jumping ahead, the I-205 crossings are then constructing 250-foot, about 4-foot diameter casings underneath the I-205, where we have existing 8 and 10-inch cast iron pipes that are underneath of the freeway there that are not encased in an outer casing. So this will give us an outer 48-inch diameter casing that we can run a 12-inch line inside. Will be much more resilient and secure in terms of operating a water line underneath the freeway. I don't want to think about what a significant water line leak underneath of the I-205 looks like and those. So it's really a critical project for us to accomplish. In fact, we have a couple other crossings that we need to come up with plans to address. This would be a good step forward. It's a grant-funded project. We're getting out to bid here in May on both I-205 and 82nd. We are going to be offering some flexible timing to the contractors and are in hopes to get better bids. With the grant portion of the project, we need to get the I-205 crossings completed by the end of the calendar year. We can offer the contractor some flexibility on when they complete the 82nd Drive project. So ideally, we would have had this out to bid probably 2-3 months ago. For this one, our consultant was not able to produce plans quite as quickly as we would have liked. So we are where we are. So hopefully by offering that flexibility, we can still get competitive bidding on the project.
So this is also one though, where we had to pivot a little bit because our original alignment that we thought was gonna be easy, once you did the utility locates and really kind of found out where everybody's at. There were some corridors, that there was just so many utilities that it's hard to put another water line in there at that point. So we had to pivot and look at some different locations. So that's another contributing factor in the delay.
One of those unforeseen circumstances. All right, Rutland Road PRV project. This is an ongoing project where we wanted to add a PRV valve at the Redland pump station. This will allow us to bring water from the Redland pressure zone down to the Holden pump station, and then to serve that area with water from the Clackamas treatment plant. Right now, the Holy Lane pump station in that area is served through a anchorway meter connection with South Fork Water Board. So this is just redundance, resilience, and supplies, and then allowing us to use more of our water in the system.
So if I can, I'm gonna even, since you got a map behind you.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, on the south side, we've got the different pressure zones, and so really we already serve the Redland pressure zone from, by CRW water, but we can't serve any of these others currently. What that project will do is that will allow us to serve that Henrici and Beaver Creek areas with water from CRW. So once we've completed that, we will in essence have all this area served by CRW. We'll still have some areas that unfortunately this is covering that we'll always have to get water through Oregon City, and then we'll still have this area that we talked about, the Bradley pump station, that once that pump station is built, we can do that. So the idea was this gives that whole south side, give us the ability to serve most of the south side with water from CRW, and then still the backup connections with South Fork Water Board. So this is kind of fulfilling our commitment from a number of years ago to provide CRW water to the south side.
Does that open up the opportunity to annex more area on the south side that's not currently in the water district and provide new service to people who either might be on wells or new developments?
Yeah, so it definitely gives us the ability to, I mean, we probably do most of that today. We have a fair amount of capacity right now, but yes, it would give us that. Now, of course, most of this area is outside the urban growth boundary, and so yeah, annexing them into the district and stuff. We're not seeing a whole lot of that taking place right now, just because you're not seeing a lot of development outside the UGB.
All right, and our last CIP and carryover project, the water treatment plant and low lift pump station improvements. So we're actually looking at replacing low lift pump number 4. and high lift pump number 3 with this project. We actually have a procurement document pulled together now that will actually be advertised on Monday. And then we'll be working forward on this project here within the current biennium. And then these will be dollars that'll be rolled over to replace those pumps. Again, those variable frequency drives are really critical to operations. Steve talks about when he walks around the treatment plant right now and you constantly hear pumps kicking on and kicking off because everything is running constant speed. So it's difficult for the operators to control flow rates. With those variable frequency drives, we can ramp those pumps up and down and vary the flow rates that are moving through the pumps, giving a lot more flexibility to how the treatment plant is operated and really increasing some efficiency and replacing some aged facilities there. So then there's the overall picture. This is on page 84 in your budget books as well. Given the numbers for each project there.
These figures, what's percentage of contingency would you add onto this stuff?
Generally, we put about a 15 to 20% contingency into a planning CIP for construction dollars.
Are you comfortable with that, given the current climate?
Yeah, that's a pretty standard practice in my career. When you have things like what happened in 2021 and 2022, where construction costs just went through the roof. If we tried to budget or tried to plan for those kind of contingencies all the time, we'd have a $15 or $16 million line item there at the bottom. So you can't always pad your bets that far. We try really hard to be the high bidder, and that's really the goal here, is to look and be conservative in our estimating to add some contingency in there. So yeah, generally in the course of my career, I've seen 15 to 20% contingencies generally be adequate. You run into the scenario where they're not.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So Todd, in the past, we've had a difficult time doing all the CPI projects for various reasons, supply issues, resource issues, timing. This is considerably more than what we've seen before. So how do you envision something this big getting done in this biennium?
There's your next slide.
Great.
Perfect
question.
Perfect, that was an awesome setup. So I think the thing to keep in mind is the carryover projects, I mean, they're off and running.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's a high confidence rate of success there. Yeah, I think the other thing that's a little bit different is what you've seen in past budgets is really a big emphasis, and rightly so, on the distribution system. What you're seeing here is a balance of the distribution system and the water treatment plant. So we haven't had a whole lot of water treatment plant projects in the past, and so we're kind of dipping into, I guess, two different pools as far as who's managing those projects and how we go forward. So I think there's a little bit of that. There's always risks associated with what can we do. I mean, the thing is we're going to go to the board on each one of these projects to ask for approval and make sure that we're explaining what we're doing and the timing. And it's kind of like in the budgeting, you don't want to shoot low. And so in these, we don't want to shoot low either. And so we do try to indicate this is what we think we can do, this is the capacity, but I've yet to see any entity actually complete 100% of their projects. So I used to work at an entity where they figured if they could get to 55 to 60%, they were doing good.
You mean within the budget cycle?
Within the budget
Right.
cycle.
Thank you, just clarify.
Sorry, yeah, apologize.
Well, we're gonna try to hit better than 55 or 60%.
Yes, we're doing much better.
I mean, we really have a solid intent to move forward with all of the projects that we have proposed here. Like with the SCADA upgrades, that the bulk of the work there is going to be consultant resources assisting us with that SCADA upgrade. With the water treatment plant expansion planning, a real substantial component of that work, again, will be consultant resources that we'll be reaching out to. Most of the distribution projects, yeah, we're anticipating that work's going to occur in-house. We're in the process right now of bringing on another staff member. But if we need to, you know, I'm well acquainted with our consultant community and have used them readily with my work with the city of Gresham. And so if we hit a point that we need to access those resources, I know where to go to find help if we need it, so.
The one risk is, you know, there are a number of partner projects in that,
Yeah.
so obviously we're a little bit at the mercy if there's a hiccup on their end.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, that's it for the CIP portion of the presentation.
Very good.
I mentioned one thing, just for the book, on page 83. Towards the bottom, where it says summary of fund proposed budget. There's a section there. It says the budget is 9 million, I think that meant to be like the 13.
Oh, yes, that needs to be updated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Page,
83.
You- Yeah, I think that,
Last year's.
yeah, I think
I
that
think
bottom
somebody just
part needs
copied it.
updated, sorry.
There's a lot of numbers in there.
Nope.
That whole little section looks like it needs updated. Sorry about that. I can go through that with you more. If you need me to detail, I could tell you the numbers based upon the information above.
I'm fine, yeah, I mean, the numbers, for me at least, they're in the chart, but
Okay. All right. Any other questions about Debbie? Okay, then move to other funds. We're gonna start off with our capital reserve fund. Again, this is where we transfer money from the general fund. You will see that we do have a beginning fund balance portion in there, and that is partly from the CIP that did not get finished in this year. So that is, so 27% is gonna be transferred from the general fund. 71% is our beginning fund balance, and then we do have 2% earnings from investments. And then our requirements, all that's only transferred to the CIP. And then we are estimating a small reserve for 23%. So overall, we're increasing this by 9% to meet our CIP requirements and to carry a little bit moving forward to the next biennium. Okay, the next is our rate stabilization fund. This fund is a requirement due to our 2016 revenue bond. It currently, the balance for this will end with $1.5 million. And this is the only activity that happens in this is we do get earnings on investment. Again, we are required to have this as long as we have our current 2016 revenue.
Once you get to the 1.5 million, will you transfer excess earnings out, or does
No,
it just continue?
We're gonna let it keep growing, yeah.
What's the investment?
I'm sorry?
What is the investment vehicle?
An investment, and so earnings on investment.
no, where is it?
Yeah,
at?
where is
Like,
it?
where is it held
We
at?
have a local and government investment pool where we put all of our, that's our only investment currently, where it's sort of like a savings account for our local government.
Is that like a fixed rate?
It's a market rate, I guess is what you would say.
Yeah.
It's with the state,
Yeah, it's with the state.
the wording.
And what rate are you currently getting?
Can you look up our, you do not, it's in our,
Look in our last.
it's in our,
Look for it, I'll look at the same.
Board packet.
yeah.
So this is, we reported, so we reported on every board packet because the interest rate does vary
Mhm.
at every month, and we tell how much we have in that fund. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
So it's combined with other funds, but we just have it earmarked on our side right? So it's one account with the state essentially.
Yeah, we have one
But it's-
LGIP with the state that we have a portion of our general fund in, portion of our
Okay.
CIP in, and our rate stabilization.
And this is in there.
This last, yeah, 4.64.
4.64%. Okay. And then our SDC reserve fund, this is, we get this from applications that generate system development charges. This fluctuates, and you can see there the historical and are adopted and what we're proposing for the next 2 years, which we are keeping it neutral. And then our revenue bonds funds, this is where we do pay for our bonds. And back to the question about the interest, we're at 4.2%.
And we're hoping to improve on that.
Yes.
Well,
More
you'll learn
information.
more at the board meeting.
Yeah, we have more information.
We're still working on it.
We're doing some research to try to get the best for the district.
Yeah.
So that will hopefully be coming. But based upon that information, when we build the budget, we build it based upon information we know currently. And so then, I take our current payments and that's how I built this. So if anything changes, it would be from there. So, okay. And that's it for the other funds. Any questions before? I did send out a request for questions and I did get a bunch of them, so I have them all here to go through. But you take questions before me? Okay. I'll go ahead again, get started on page 85. I'll find that right now. It's saying that the CIP for 26-27 is estimated 13.2 million, but 28 and 29 is less than 3 million. And for 30, it's only 1 million. Is this because CIP planning for the later years is in process and you expect to significantly increase once the new biennium budget is proposed? Additionally, does CRW have the capacity to absorb the amount of work that we can get for the necessary materials of the jobs? So a couple parts of that. For the current, the CIP for the current biennium includes drawing down capital reserves and is in alignment with the 2021 capital projects strategy memo. So significant carryovers are in this biennium, which we have already talked about. The I-205, 82nd are included. The workload will be a major effort for the CRW staff. We are actively recruiting additional engineering personnel and plan to engage external consultants to meet project demands if necessary. And we do feel that we anticipate adequate materials availability. So, and then the next part of that question was the future. So capital spending is projected to return to a typical level of approximately 3 million per biennium, consistent with past practices when reserves are not being drawn down. This budget that we give you is based upon information that we know currently that we need, that is on our list that still needs done. And then further refinement of adjustments of capital project planning is expected during the future budget process. So basically, we will more than likely return to the 3 million for the CIP fund. At this time, this is the list that we have based upon the projects we currently have.
Are you planning to do master planning in this biennium or in next biennium for capital projects?
No, so the master plan was adopted in 2019, so we would anticipate another master plan for circa 2029.
So there's no shock here. I mean, we are planning to move forward on significant investments in the water treatment plant. And so if you look at what we did with our facilities plan, at that time, it looked at about a $40 million investment in the plant. That would all be something that would be in a future CIP, but we don't have that information today. That's part of the project to do the additional study, so we kind of get a better idea of those costs. Presumably that would be projects that we would be paying for, with other sources of funding, revenue bonds or WIFI loan or those type of things. So we don't have those numbers today to share with you, but I want to make sure what this reflects is kind of the continued investment in the distribution system, but it doesn't reflect the fact that we acknowledge that there's going to be a significant project related to the water treatment plant in probably next biennium.
So you say that due to the workload, you may have to add additional engineering staff. How, or
Not staff.
Consultants, yeah.
Consult, we would.
consultant? Well, I thought.
Well, we're in the process of hiring.
Engineering personnel.
We're in the process of hiring someone right now, but that really just.
So that's not 2 or 3 or 4 guys.
And that is
One
in
guy.
budgeted.
Because my part of that question was well, have you taken that account in your PERS and benefit contribution of 18% increase, or that would probably be flat with one person, you'd never notice a lot.
Yeah. So the engineering personnel he's talking about is a budgeted position.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, the next question we received is from page 17 to 23. 18.49 was the increase to personnel costs. I understand there are a number of factors driving the increase. The increase of 0.6 FTE seems like it would be very important, minor portion. If it is helpful to understand what are some of these reasons. So I went through and shared with you the assumptions we made when we were building the budget. So our PERS are tier 1 and tier 2. It's moving from 24.99% to 26.56%. Our OSSER is moving from 22.06 to 24.36. Our COLA for FY25 is budgeted at 3.3. And for 26, we're using 5.5, which would be the highest amount for our agreement. Our medical and dental, we projected 6% for both years. We included a salary step for staff that were eligible for both years. And we also are implementing our new salary schedule and the new longevity. And then this kind of is a similar question, so I just provided more information on here comparing the years. So salaries are showing the question. So again, looking at last year, we had 45.8 budgeted FTE for the first year and 44.8 for the second year. This year, we're steady at 44.4 for both years. The salaries for the last biennium increased 13.6. This year, they increased 23.79. Benefits increased by 17.9 last year. This year, they're increasing by 10.12. So overall, personnel services for last biennium increased 15.2, and overall for this biennium increased 18.49. And again, these are primary due to the cost of living adjustments, the steps increase, and other negotiated wage adjustments. I hope that pretty much answers the questions and digs in a little bit more to the personnel services.
Do you have a longer range financial plan where you're anticipating additional high increases to personnel costs like this, or do they kind of taper off after a certain?
So we don't have a longer
Yeah.
plan. We're just focused more on that 2-year period.
How many steps are on the salary schedule?
8 steps.
You get a step every year?
Once you get to 8, you are at the top. And then, and that's part of, like you heard the longevity pay, that's partly why that was added.
Can you tell us more about longevity pay, or is that coming up later?
It's based upon your years of experience, so there's between 5 to 10 years, you're given an amount between 10 to 15 years, so it moves up every 5 years, and it's broken out per payroll.
So it's essentially, like you said, kind of like steps, but.
It's just an additional pay based on your experience.
Okay, it doesn't increase the salary every year, it is a bonus.
It's added to the pay. So there's PERS, there's taxes, everything's brought into it just like pay.
So
And then
is a
if
portion
we
of
were
salary
to-
It's just an attraction to people who've been here 8 years or more to stay. Because you're
Correct.
gonna get your next longevity bump. I
Exactly.
think it's pretty common practice, especially in stepwise union type places.
I guess, yeah, I got to understand, totally understand the difference from the steps, like why it could essentially.
Steps
be-
is, so most likely, it depends, once you get to year 8, like he said, it's just an incentive to. Exactly. Okay, the next is on page 123. The 23-25 budget was 39.8 and the 25-27 budget is 42. What are the main? So this is the revenue, this page, the 123. So I talked about the two primary reasons of that is the beginning fund balance, which increased by 5.5 million, and water sales, which are projected to increase by 2.7 million. And talked about the beginning fund balance for general fund for the 23-25 was budgeted at 7.5, but the actual was about 14.6. The variance is primary due to higher than anticipated revenues, including grant funds, interest income, and miscellaneous revenue throughout the years. And the water sales is based on projected rate adjustments for the biennium. The next question we received was how carryover projects are handled from one budget cycle to the next. Does the approved funding from the previous budget follow the project to the new budget cycle? If not, where is the previous approved funding placed? This is a very great question. So per Oregon budget law, we're required to get new appropriation adjustments for the new biennium. So even though we're in the middle of project, we're required to bring it to the board to get it approved appropriation to continue funding that project. So again, it requires a new reappropriation. Unspent funds are sitting in the beginning fund balance. If you remember when we went back to the capital reserve, I mentioned that there was a high beginning fund balance in there, and that is to fund those CIP projects that are in progress.
So I'm gonna make my special district's pitch here. So we are a special district. So as the name implies, we get to specialize in providing one service, and that's providing drinking water. And so the beauty of that is in these instances, if we don't spend that money, it's still the district's money. It's still sitting there for the next year. So it doesn't go anywhere. And so I'm gonna pick on cities for a little bit. We don't have to recompete with other parks and police and fire and all those other resources that a city a lot of times has to balance. So the beauty is the money that the water district receives is the water district's. So it's nice where we don't feel like if you don't spend it, that's fine. And we don't try to spend it all. By
Yeah.
any means.
But that's why the carryover projects are listed there again, is because we're required Oregon budget law to get appropriations. The next question was about page 15. It says, I noticed the number of accounts on commercial, industrial, MF category that decreased over the last 2 years. What was the reason? I'm just gonna go, and it says, part of my answer got put into the question, sorry. So if you read, the apparent decreases due to changes in how our account data was categorized and reported in 2022-23. The overall number of counts has continued to grow each year, but shifts in classification methods led to differences on how accounts were grouped. So this current year, we went back to the previous reporting years. Yeah. I think.
So that was a good question, because I actually panicked when I read that question, because I didn't have a good answer for that, but who did?
We did, we built the budget, we noticed that too, and we're like, okay, we are gonna stick to going back to the. No. The next question, and do the CRW agreements with the city of Milwaukee and Happy Valley have financial impact? does taking over direct billing for customers in the city of Milwaukee reduced administrative charges for the city for billing prior years, and Happy Valley. So these are two very different agreements, and when I was sitting here, I forgot to write up Happy Valley. I got this question late, but I will discuss it. So City of Milwaukee, let me talk about that agreement. That's an agreement that is 10 years old that is expiring June 30th of this year. Now, what that agreement is for 360 customers that we share with City of Milwaukee. They have the sewer, we have the water. We agreed with City of Milwaukee that we would let them bill those customers the full, so they can bill them for the water, sewer, and then they would send us the revenue and minus 5% for administrative charges. That agreement is expiring. We will be taking back those customers. And as part of that, we did in this budget remove our administrative charge, the 5% that we were paying them, but we increased the services for meter readers who go and read all of our meters, and for our bin mailing who create our invoices. So that, I think, answers. And then the Happy Valley agreement. The Happy Valley agreement we have is that if they do annex some of our customers, we get to keep those customers. So if they come in they take on a different area. So that is a positive, that is a neutral. We'll get to keep steady revenue. We don't have to, budget possibly lower water revenue. So that is the way that we handle that. So it's it is really a cost neutral. We don't do any relief.
Do we get to keep them in perpetuity or per a certain number of years?
No, they're our customers for the agreement.
The nice thing is Happy Valley, they don't have their own water system, so they rely on primarily Sunrise Water Authority to serve that area, but we order some of the areas that we serve. And so it was an easy agreement for them because they have no water system.
Yeah.
So it actually helps them as well. This isn't the same with all cities. I'll just point out, Oregon City would be a good example where as growth happens in areas of CRW, the city will look to try to annex and withdraw those properties so that they can manage that growth. So that's one of the challenges. We don't have a similar agreement with that.
Okay, the next question we received is, which capital projects are SDC funded during the upcoming biennium? This is a great question, and we're letting you know we're currently reviewing the process to determine which ones are eligible to be partially or fully funded. Final determinations will be made as part of the ongoing planning process. And keep in mind, our SDC revenue is minimal, so last year we budgeted $1 million and we did not spend at this point any of it. So it is an ongoing planning process to find the projects that are eligible. Oops, I missed the second question. Sorry, I'm going back. And then through what date are capital projects indexed? I'm going to answer Jason's answer because I don't quite understand this question. I'm going to be honest. Go ahead.
So for instance, like you'll see with like our SDC charges that we directly index that, and we're using data from Engineering News Record and costs that they track to index our SDC charges. So we don't directly index our capital improvement project costs. As we evaluate each project year over year, we use budgeting information that we have available to us. So in a pipeline, we'll look at what are we actually paying for pipe, and we will try to look forward and anticipate what future inflation might impact that. But we're not doing a direct project cost indexing with those projects.
That makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next question, I think we answered this one, but just to provide more information, has CRW ever used the rate stabilization reserve fund? Is utilization likely longer term 10-year planning? Is there a fund balance target for this fund? So again, it was created from our 2016 bond resolution and it is intended to remain in place for the duration of the bond. We have not used this fund to cover debt payment as we had budgeted revenues to cover, as budgeted revenues have been sufficient to meet our obligations. And then the final, while there is currently no specific plan to use it as a target, the reserve is expected to grow over time through accrued interest. Utilization of the fund is not anticipated in the near term. However, it may be considered in the longer term 10-year financial planning if necessary to manage revenue fluctuations or economic uncertainty. So there's always a possibility, but it is definitely not being planned.
If CRW did refinance the existing debt, would you look at potentially removing the rate stabilization reserve, bringing that up for?
It is possible, yes.
Thanks.
The next question is page 46. If you look at that, and it's covering, was very helpful. It would be helpful to see, be great to see the dollar and percentages for each line detail. And I'm asking you to look at the page 125 and I just screenshotted there. We do have that, it's just later on. Where you can see line by line. Probably up to the 14.9. And that is the questions I had.
Good questions.
Yeah, I will comment. That was really, I appreciate folks who had a chance to look through that and ask a question. That was very helpful to get that in advance, and it was good to stimulate some discussion on our end and kind of improvements to what we're presenting, I think. So thank you for taking that time.
Thank you for such an informative presentation. It was fantastic.
I agree.
Really interesting. So I think we have some approval actions on the agenda next. Is there
I
any,
think first is discussion, isn't it?
yeah, is there any discussion? Are there any public participants that would like to make a comment?
Nobody's online, so.
Any discussion or questions around the budget?
I just think you did a really good job.
Thank you.
Some of the past years, I don't even think my account. I like something I can read and understand, and I think that's important for our customers, if they wanna look at this, to be in English, so to speak. You know, and it's easily understood, the facts and figures are there. As usual, our CRW family did an excellent job. You guys, and you're regarding.
Thank you. Yay.
It's a personal
She doesn't work for you.
I knew he
Just a
was gonna say
reminder.
that, and I told you the last time I could fire you.
You can do.
Oh, dear.
Jerry, I would add that I concur with what you said. These are excellent documents. There's a ton of information that for someone like me, who's more of a picture kind of person rather than numbers, of course, I can actually make some sense of this. And not only this document, but the other two documents that I've got recently, they're of the same quality. They're excellent.
Thank you.
And I know that probably most people in the water district have never looked at any of this kind of information, and they may never. However, I do believe I saw in the budget document that it is based on a 5% rate increase this September, and then one about a year from that time.
But I've been,
So I guess in my mind, I'll be interested to see how your non-collectible accounts fluctuates, or if it does, because sooner or later, 5% at the water district and 7 or 8% at the power district and everything else, all of those things are going to collide. And it'll be interesting to see how that's going to impact the long-term planning for the water district.
Well, I would agree. I mean, looking at how some of the costs have gone up, it's kind of staggering. I mean, if this were a private business, I think you'd be looking at some real cost-cutting measures. Just because the percentage of increase on materials and personnel services and it just goes down and down, I mean, double digits, big double digits. So it's not sustainable. So I would hope the water district takes a look at it from a longer term perspective. Otherwise, the increases back to the ratepayers are gonna have to go up significantly, because costs have gone up significantly.
I think that those doesn't speak to the advanced maintenance improvement procedure that the district's trying to do now, so that they don't get in the hole. Like Portland's in a hole with their city streets and all that kind of stuff. They just too much to pull out of it.
And there are other water districts that have, for lack of a better term, don't really want to upset their customers by raising rates, you know, because that doesn't make them popular. And they are suffering. And they're raising them, I use the example of Sandy Water District. You know, for years they sat and said, no, you know, we can do this, we can handle it, we'll do this and do this. It got down to it and they had to raise the rates 241%. So, you know, and it's, I think with ours, with 5 or 5.5, we're about the cheapest right in town. Put it that way, because Oak Lodge went, no, it was suggested 41%. I think they went like 20 to 21, something like that, if I remember right. Sunrise went 34% over 3 years. But we're looking at, you know, and that has to do with planning and budgeting, really watching every aspect of it. And I, as a ratepayer and this member of this family, I really appreciate you guys doing this. I think we're on the right track. And I know we don't get a lot of people coming and complaining about raising rates.
So,
Which is a good thing, because we don't.
So, and I would agree with those comments. I think the 5% is a good number, but if you look at where we are in the continuum,
Mhm.
we're in the top quartile of highest paid water
Right.
utilities in the area. And my comment is simply, we can't sustain 20% increases in some of these major categories. Otherwise, we won't be in the top quartile. We will be the high cost provider of water in our district or in the community. So it's just an observation. You just can't do it through perpetuity. This year, there were a lot of corrective actions that were taken, and you would expect the percentages to be higher. But next time around, it's got to be more in balance. So.
There was a lot of market justice all around Oregon in the last few years, yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel qualified to say like, oh, you actually don't need this project, or you should do something else. But I am wondering, right, you talked about priorities, so presumably there were some projects that didn't make it, and was it close? Like, how do you kind of decide between this one versus another one? And then some of you, like, you know, noted like it's leaking it, or like Milwaukee's doing something, now is the time, and that seems to be pretty clear. The one that doesn't seem urgent, again, me being not at all an expert, but perhaps again due to construction is the time for it, is the I-205 crossing. But yeah,
The grant money one?
Yeah,
Right, so
that's what
That
we
one's
have to
actually
do.
funded by grants.
And
Yeah.
if we don't do it by a certain time,
We lose that money.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that makes sense.
May not be there.
And just, if you look at page 85, we do have some of the ones that did not get
Yep.
prioritized, that are in the future version.
What page?
Page 85,
And if we included the list of all the projects that we left off.
I mean, those are just some of the ones that we did. Yeah.
You mentioned
We have a few more pages.
a couple times it's been brought up that a lot of them are grant funded, a lot of improvement projects. Are they state grants, federal grants?
No,
Foundation
well,
grants?
good question. Federal with the state matching.
Do you see a risk that the federal grants get frozen or dried up?
We have not yet.
with the existing.
Yeah, with
in
our
the
current
future.
existing, do
And just
we
based on
feel that we
federal's
may not
freezing
get
everything, they
future?
can Find a freeze.
We'll keep trying for future ones. That's what I think we can
No,
tell
that's-
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that we secured, we've got to move forward and get them done.
And they seem to be continuing to, the state is still providing the reimbursement payments on the grants that we have active right now. So those don't seem to be frozen now, or what the future opportunities are going to be, there's a great big question mark there.
No, I think I'm more asking about the ones that we already have.
The ones, yeah.
There's a risk of federal just deciding to freeze them.
At this point, the ones we already have, we're still getting payments and getting good follow-up on. And we are wrapping those, I mean, 2 are getting wrapped up right now, and then the I-205 will be the last.
A lot of it what type of grants and where they're from. So the ones that we've received are really natural hazard mitigation funds. And so, it's that old adage, make sure, or don't miss an opportunity with a disaster. And so with the wildfires, we had an opportunity to submit these projects. And so, I think there's a lot of general support for moving those forward regardless. But yeah, future will be interesting.
I'm grateful that we prioritize projects that have an opportunity to improve efficiencies in the treatment plants. That seems like a really responsible thing to use rate their funds. So that's a super great plan.
And lower cost.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, Steve and his team have been trying to figure out a lot of the improvements.
It's been good discussion. Any further discussion or questions? I think we're ready for a motion. Does someone want to make a motion to approve?
I move to approve the general fund biennial 2025-2027 budget as presented on LP 31.
Great. Facility, do we have a second?
Second.
Right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the general fund biennial 2025-27 budget as presented on LB 31. Will someone call the?
Yeah.
Aaron,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Tessa,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Tim, yes, Vasily,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, perfect.
Hey, breathe, you guys.
We got more.
No, we got
more.
Not done yet.
Okay, one down.
Don't jinx
Okay,
it.
3 more.
Next item, do we have a motion for the approval of CIP fund budget?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the CIP fund budget as presented on LB 10 for the 2025-27 biennium. Will we call the?
Yep. Aaron,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Tessa,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Tim. Yes. Vasily,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
that's the end.
Thank you.
Third action, do we have a motion to approve the other funds?
So moved.
We need to read it out, or is it sufficient?
I think normally you have to read it out.
Oh, yeah.
Just to be safe.
I move to approve the Capital Reserve Fund, Revenue Bond Fund, Rate Stabilization Reserve Fund, and SDC Reserve Fund biannual 2025 to 2027 budget as presented for LB 10, LB 11S, LB 35, and LB 36.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Right, it's been moved and seconded. Will you please call the vote?
Aaron,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Tessa,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Tim. Yes. Vasily,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
Approved unanimously.
Do we need to go back one and read the entirety of the other motion, or?
I think you
Okay.
stated.
You
it.
restated it, I
You
think.
restated it,
Right.
so I think it's fine.
And then the very last one.
Okay,
This is a fun one.
all right. This will be easy to, hopefully. Do we have a motion for this one?
So moved.
Can you read it?
Yeah.
Could be.
Oh, I move to declare there is no tax levy included in the approved biennial 2025-2027 budget.
I second.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second. Please call.
Aaron,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Tessa,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Vasily,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
pass unanimously.
Thanks. No, thank you. Pass it off after
And
Christina.
do we have to approve these notes from?
We did at the very beginning.
Yeah, right
Okay.
again.
Yep, very good. And I think you guys have already, I'm just gonna give everyone a chance to go around the table and say any closing comments before we adjourn. I will start. This was my very first budget for a water district and for CRW, and I was told from the beginning it would be fun and different than my school district budget. And then Steve came, no. Yeah. I did really like it. It was very different than a school district of cutting, you can probably see, seeing all over cuts. And so I love this process. So, and I am loving being here and presenting this budget for you and working with an amazing team.
So this was not my first water CIP. I was 16 years at the city of Gresham, so, but it has been a pleasure working with CRW, and we're gonna follow you folks in preparing the CIP for this group and presenting it, and looking forward to getting all these projects done.
I really appreciate your work tonight and the presentation tonight and staff's work. I know this is a huge effort to put together the biennial budget. So you guys did an excellent job, and it was easy for me to read and easy to support as well. So thank you.
I just have to say how lucky and blessed I feel to work for CRW, because I had, at this point in my career, to come to this place, to work with all these people, it truly is amazing, and it can really make a difference. So, and thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Well, I think that having done this now twice, I've learned that Clackamas River Water is very fortunate to have the staff and the working crew and the operators that they have. It's well run, and it's reliable and produces high quality product. And I don't know what more we could ask for relative to that. I mean, if you look around what's going on with budgeting cycles in school districts and city governments and all around us, every day, somebody's coming up millions of dollars that they don't have or don't know where they're gonna get. And fortunately, we're not in that situation right now, and with good luck and good planning in the future, it'll stay that way.
I want to echo what has been said before me. But this has just been a really great experience. Great job, CRW team. That was, this budget is incredible, very well thought out. Very complex what you do. I feel to the comments earlier about how you put it together in a format that we can understand. So thank you. Well done.
As someone who knows relatively little about what Clackamas River Water does, I find it just fascinating to read through the stuff and see the details and hear the presentations of who's doing what. So thank you for providing that context. It really helps me feel like I make intelligent decisions to vote yes on all the things.
Well, I thought you guys really respected all of our time by doing the work. And to that, I'm really appreciative. When this showed up on the doorstep.
I closed the door.
My wife was saying, well, I'm not gonna see you for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And in a couple of hours, I appeared, and it was like, it was really laid out well. And I got to the information that I needed to get to quickly, and submitted my questions, and you addressed them, Christina. And really appreciate you respecting all of our time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. The document was excellent. The presentations were really helpful. I was really worried that I didn't have dinner, but. That was really nice. And also just gives me hope that like, we can make government work. And,
Maybe we gotta
Yeah.
take this on the road, too.
thank you.
Rusty, keep forgetting.
Oh,
you.
yeah, Rusty. Oh, muted.
Yes, I really like that all the budget information as it was presented was easy to understand. That was a real plus. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of you. I want to tell you all, though, we have a board meeting every month, and you're more than welcome to show up and participate. I want to give a shout out also to not only our employees, in some past years, we've had some really rough issues that happen. Within our CRW family, with nature, our team stepped up. Unbelievable how they stepped up. Wildfires, ice storms, the whole 9 yards. I also want to give a shout out to the board. I know that we pay very close attention to what we're doing. We may sound like we vote yes on everything, but believe me, every one of us goes through it, asks questions, gets online with like I do and finds answers. And we're all an integral part. And all our staff, whether you're management or whatever, it only works if we all work together. And that's what we have here. And you don't see that very often. I don't see it a lot on other boards or anywhere. So hats off to all of you, to all of us, the whole CRW family, for doing an excellent job. Now can we go home?
Well, you have one more.
I have a half hour.
Oh. No.
So, Tom, thank you for making sure we're not Zoom bombed. I appreciate
That's
it.
what was missing.
So, and kind of operating stuff behind the scenes there on that. And then Ted and Stephen, thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Doing a lot of the work behind, keep feeding, Christina goodies and stuff to keep her calm and stuff through this whole process. And so,
And thanks for minutes.
yeah, and thanks for minutes and all the, and I think it is, so I think the things I want to stress is one, it is a team effort. And so, I just am thankful for the staff. And this is a new team. I mean, sitting around this table as far as the staff, the only 2 people you saw last time were myself and Ted. So the rest of them, Stephen's joined us and, well, and Com, sorry, Com. See you again, you're hiding in the background. No, and so actually she wasn't at the last budget meeting.
She was not,
She wasn't, so.
And since you're doing recognitions, I want to recognize Joe Eskew for his contribution
Oh,
to the
yeah.
CIP. He made it, I've only been here 5-6 months, and so Joe's contribution and assistance in the CIP was enormous.
So there's that piece. I was actually gonna thank the board as well, but really I want to thank all of you collectively. We can't do this without people volunteering and dedicating their time. I'll be honest, I think Christina and I were both very encouraged with the questions and stuff that came, and that actually energized us. That was good. But yeah, I realize this is taking time out, nice evening out there to go look at numbers and listen to people talk, but we do value that. The other piece along with that is we talked a lot about partnerships, and I think hopefully the budget illustrated some of the things that we're trying to really work together. Vasily, you made a comment about government working and stuff, and I think we're trying to take heart, and hopefully we're reflecting this in the budget where who do we serve? And it's the public. I mean, when we're trying to make decisions and approach things in a manner that has that value to the public. And so that's one of the things I'm hoping comes through with how we're approaching this and trying to prepare. As we move forward on the cost thing, I will just, I've always felt water is an undervalued resource. And so I think it's important that we try to proclaim kind of what that value is. And so, And whether that's the investments in the people and the infrastructure and all of that. And then, Sherry mentioned some challenges from natural and otherwise that we've encountered. But we still have challenges ahead of us as far as an aging infrastructure. We're at that point with a 60-plus-year-old plant, things don't last forever. So how do we approach that? And so we're trying to be very thoughtful in how we do that. So I just thank you for this team, staff that's worked on it, and for all of you for your volunteering and contributions. So thank you for spending that time. And thank you for giving me that time to share.
And I might add that in 2026, from the foundation, the basis of where we are today, we will be 100 years old.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. That's gonna be a nice cover.
Yes.
We should have budgeted a big celebration.
I know.
Presented a personnel service.
Yeah.
That'll be a
Stick it up.
Yeah.
We'll use last year's projects.
So, we've come a long way, and I think that this is indicative of how the next 100 years will go. You want to see a legacy where it's like this, continually. So.
One final action, we need to adjourn officially. Does anyone move? Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Do it anyway.
Second.